Isabella sits at her desk, the sunlight refracting through the shards of her modest window, scattering shimmering rainbows across her room. Her stylus hovers over the wax tablet, aimless yet eager, waiting to bring her thoughts to life. Her gaze, however, is locked on the expanse of blue sky beyond the glass. In her mind, vivid images unfold. Young men delicately courting equally young women, their words a delicate choreography of flattery and veiled intentions. The subtle interplay of wit and yearning in this imagined dance, often labeled as romance with final intent less virtuous, captivates her thoughts. As the perfect scene crystallizes in her imagination, it unleashes a torrent of words onto the soft wax. Yet the stylus in her hand struggles to keep pace with the vibrant narrative in her mind. The frustration mounts as her hand fails to capture the finesse of the theatrical world she envisions. She pauses, reflecting on her clumsy attempts. Her words speak of the joy found in companionship, the longing for a kind glance from an unattainable lady, and the dream of pressing a kiss to a delicate, outstretched hand. The essence is there, but the execution feels lacking. Isabella knows that poetry demands more than heartfelt sentiment. It requires precision, balance, and a structure as firm as the foundation of a house. A poorly chosen word, like a weak brick, threatens the integrity of the whole. Frustration gnaws at her. The limitations of her materials, her small wax tablet and dwindling savings, only add to her irritation. Driven by an impulsive need to perfect her craft, Isabella does something out of character. She flings open her drawer and retrieves all her savings. The lengthening spring days bring bright sunlight and chilled air, a blend of promise and briskness. Wrapped in her shawl, Isabella marches purposefully to the stationery vendor. The purchase, a double-sided wax tablet of medium size, costs her 4 soldi, nearly everything she has. The tablet feels weighty in her hands, not only because of its physical presence, but because of the sacrifice it represents. Still immersed in her thoughts, Isabella wanders toward the river instead of heading straight home. The world around her is stirring to life. The first budding leaves on the trees hint at the abundance of the season ahead. The river flows beside her, sparkling in the sunlight, its rhythmic murmuring like a gentle lullaby. Ahead, 100 feet away, Vittorio steps out of a house. Isabella's instinct is to call out to him, but she stops herself, savoring the tranquility of her own solitude. Vittorio, unaware of her presence, briskly walks away. Isabella follows his path at a leisurely pace, her curiosity piqued by the nondescript house he had just exited. As she draws nearer, the faint murmur of voices reaches her ears. There's no sign to identify the building's purpose, but the sounds hint at the lively hum of a tavern. Her steps slow as she approaches, but before she can linger, 2 men stumble out of the door, startling her. One man, visibly intoxicated, leans heavily on his companion, who struggles to keep him upright. The drunken man stops short, noticing Isabella. He smirks and slurs. "What do we have here? Looking for some fun? A fresh face like yours must be expensive. I'll have to pass." He reaches for her shoulder, but his companion snaps his hand back with a sharp reprimand. Together, they stagger off in the direction Isabella came from. Her heart pounding, Isabella feels herself drawn toward the still open door, from which laughter and muffled voices spill out. Peering cautiously inside, she catches a glimpse of the scene within. Men lounging with women clad in revealing attire, the air thick with smoke and the faint clink of glasses. The tableau fills her with a confusing mixture of emotions, curiosity, intrigue, unease, and an undeniable sense of the forbidden. Before she can process what she's seeing, the door slams shut with a heavy thud, jolting her back to reality. Clutching her wax tablet tightly, Isabella turns and jogs home, her cheeks burning with shame and exhilaration at what she has just witnessed. Isabella sits at her desk, the the new tablet before her, but the spell of inspiration has been broken. The words that once poured from her now elude her. Upset by the turn of events, she casts aside her tools and heads to the barn. There, amidst the comforting smell of hay, she begins moving bales with deliberate force, letting the physical labor channel her frustration and clear her mind. Isabella spends 3 weeks crafting what she considers her first true poem. With her new wax tablet, she writes and rewrites with ease, refining each line until it achieves what her young eyes deem perfect balance. Finally satisfied, one quiet evening, she decides to immortalize her work on one of her precious sheets of paper. Taking a deep breath, she brings out her pot of ink and her cherished quill, tools she uses sparingly, a bittersweet reminder of their limited supply. She sets a second candle on her desk to illuminate the task ahead. With slow, deliberate strokes, she begins writing, ensuring her words are straight, aligned, and flawless in their form. Every letter reflects her diligence as she checks and rechecks for grammatical errors, determined not to let even the smallest flaw tarnish her creation. Once the final word is complete, she sprinkles fine wood dust over the page to absorb any excess ink and carefully blows it off moments later. The result is stunning, a beautifully rendered poem where form and content harmonize perfectly. Isabella leans back, her spirit soaring with pride. Her face glows with satisfaction, the flickering candlelight reflecting the radiance of her accomplishment. In this moment she feels triumphant, her hard work transformed into something truly elegant. Isabella approaches her household responsibilities with unwavering dedication, ensuring that Vittorio has no cause for complaint. Yet her trips to the market are a cherished escape, filled with the vibrancy of street performances. Musicians, acrobats, jugglers displaying their physical prowess, storytellers weaving captivating tales, and, most of all, poets. These spectacles light up her day. Isabella particularly enjoys listening to the poets recite their verses, sometimes clumsily rehearsed, other times flawlessly delivered. Over time, her discerning ear grows more critical, assessing the quality of the poetry. Even so, these moments often spark inspiration for her own writing. In a rare mood of curiosity and mischief, Isabella decides to wander down a street she rarely visits. She knows it is where the young man the priest suggested as a suitor works. Wanting to satisfy her curiosity, she stealthily approaches to observe him in his natural environment. Conscious of her actions, Isabella acknowledges her own behavior as slightly intrusive. Concealing herself behind a shopkeeper's stand, she spies on the young man outside his modest bakery. The establishment appears reasonably successful, offering no luxuries but presenting a simple and functional selection of bread. As she observes him, Isabella notes that he seems thoroughly average in every way, neither particularly charming nor off-putting. There is nothing about him that stirs strong feelings one way or another. Her opinion shifts abruptly, however, when a child innocently touches a loaf of bread on display. The man's reaction is swift and unreasonably harsh, his anger disproportionate to the minor transgression. Witnessing this outburst cements Isabella's resolve. She turns away, shaking her head in quiet disapproval. Returning home, she feels comforted in her conviction. No one will dictate her choices when it comes to relationships. 3 months after completing her first poem, Isabella has written 14 more, each delving into different facets of love and courtship. With a growing sense of accomplishment, she carefully takes another sheet of her precious paper and, in bold, elegant calligraphy, pens the title Padua's Poetics by Isabella Ferro. Pride swells within her as she gathers the completed pages, arranging them neatly into a tidy stack on her desk. Satisfied, she stands and leans over her desk, gazing out at the almost full moon, partially veiled by drifting clouds. The ethereal glow fills her room with a soft light, casting an air of serenity over her creation. Feeling the day's efforts catching up with her, Isabella jumps into bed, scooping Rosso into her arms. She smothers the reluctant cat in playful kisses, his muffled protests met with laughter before both settle beneath the blankets. Snuggled close, Rosso's quiet purring lulls Isabella into a contented drowsiness, her heart buoyed by her creative achievements. Isabella descends the stairs briskly, her light steps echoing faintly. She enters the workshop carrying a neatly rolled bundle of papers, where Vittorio and Donato are carefully placing the body of an elderly man onto the preparation table. "I'm going out," Isabella declares firmly, her voice cutting through the quiet focus of their task. Before Vittorio can respond, she quickly adds, "I'll be back before lunchtime," and leaves as swiftly as she arrived. Vittorio and Donato exchange puzzled glances, the unspoken question hanging between them. The city streets are alive with the energy of spring, nature in full bloom. Isabella strides confidently, her light dress catching the breeze, her hair cascading in free waves behind her. The joy in her steps draws the attention of passers-by, her presence exuding vitality and purpose. After crossing nearly half the city, her pace slows, and she collects herself. Her gaze settles on a shop reputed to be the finest in Padua, its wooden plaque carved in the shape of a parchment and bearing the name Pergamini. Straightening her dress and taking a deep breath, she steps inside. The interior is quiet, almost reverent, with rows of books lining the shelves. More books than Isabella has ever seen, perhaps 300 or more. A man, around Vittorio's age, sits at a writing desk beneath a high window, meticulously working on a sheet of paper. To her left, an open door reveals a room where 6 copyists are diligently engaged in their tasks, the soft scratch of quills filling the air. Approaching the counter, Isabella moves with tentative curiosity, her eyes scanning the titles along the spines of several books. Just as she reaches the counter, a voice startles her. "How can I help you, signora?" the man asks with a polite smile. "Good morning, signor," Isabella replies, regaining her composure. She unrolls her bundle of papers and places them on the counter with pride. "I was hoping to inquire if you might publish this book for me, please." The shopkeeper raises an eyebrow, takes the bundle, and reads the title aloud before looking at Isabella with a skeptical expression. He flips through the pages quickly, glancing at the contents. "Poetry," he remarks dismissively. "Let me guess. You're Isabella Farrow?" Isabella nods, her pride unwavering. The man sighs and sets the papers down. "Let me tell you, young signora, poetry and writing in general is a man's domain. There's a reason why we've never seen a woman recite poems for men, let alone write them. Women simply lack the aptitude for proper expression. That's why men do the courtship, while women listen in awe." He picks up a random page and shows it to Isabella. "Even your calligraphy lacks strength. It reveals hesitation, not conviction." The shopkeeper hands the papers back to her respectfully, though his words cut deeply. "My dear girl, it's better you hear this now than later. Pursuing such foolishness will lead you nowhere. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I am doing you a favor by being honest." He straightens and adds, "Is there anything else you need?" Isabella stands frozen, her spirit deflated by the man's condescension. The words she might have used to defend herself slip away just as he predicted. Swallowing her disappointment, she replies softly, "No, signor. Thank you anyway. Have a pleasant day." At home, Vittorio immediately notices the shadow hanging over Isabella. She moves about listlessly, her responses to his gentle questions vague and noncommittal. Her usual spark is missing, replaced by a heavy silence that Vittorio struggles to penetrate. On the evening, Isabella sits on her bed, her back propped against the pillow. A bundle of her poems lies in her lap, but her mind refuses to focus on the carefully crafted words. Instead, the shopkeeper's dismissive monologue plays over and over in her head, like a relentless echo. Frustration wells up, and in a sudden burst of anger, she tears 3 pages in half, throwing the entire pile onto the floor. Pulling the blanket over her head, she mutters harshly to herself, "You're stupid. What did you expect? You're so stupid." The next morning, the soft sound of scratching at her door stirs her from sleep. Sitting up, Isabella's eyes fall on the scattered pages littering the floor, some torn and others crumpled. With a sigh, she opens the door to find Rosso, who immediately trots toward the bed. She scoops him up before he can settle, hugging him tightly against her chest. For a moment, she simply holds him, her gaze lingering on the mess around her. Her discarded work and the burned-out candle by her bedside. Setting Rosso gently on the bed, she kneels to gather the papers, smoothing some of them out with her hands. As she opens her desk drawer, her fingers pause over a pristine stack of untouched paper. "Only 7 left," she whispers to herself, counting them carefully. Her voice is tinged with despair. She places the fresh paper back in the drawer, along with her torn poems, before turning to Rosso, now curled on her pillow, ready for his nap. At breakfast, Isabella joins Vittorio at the table, where he has been waiting patiently for her. The air between them is heavy with unspoken words. Vittorio watches her carefully, noting her uncharacteristic silence as she stirs her soup absently. Finally, in a soft, hesitant voice, Isabella speaks. "Uncle, I want to earn money." Vittorio, ever composed, asks calmly, "What would you like to do?" Biting her lip, Isabella hesitates before replying, "I'd like to help you if I can." His eyes narrow slightly, curious. "Somehow I don't think you're asking to dig graves or build coffins." Fidgeting with her spoon, Isabella mutters, "No, I was wondering if I could take care of the people downstairs for you." Leaning back in his chair, Vittorio studies her carefully. "I see. Do you think you're ready for that? It's not difficult work usually, but it requires a steady hand and a steady mind. Dealing with the dead can be unsettling." Still avoiding his gaze, Isabella answers in a firm yet quiet tone, "I've been with you for 5 years now, Uncle. The ghosts under my bedroom haven't scared me so far. There's a difference between living near them and touching them, preparing them," Vittorio says evenly. "I know," Isabella insists. "I'd still like to try." Vittorio gives a small nod, his voice steady and sure. "Very well. I'll see what I can arrange for you." A week later, one late afternoon, Vittorio emerges from the workshop and finds Isabella scrubbing the floor. "Are you still interested in helping me?" he asks. Isabella pauses mid-swipe, glancing up at him. After a brief moment of thought, she replies, "Yes, Uncle." Vittorio nods. "Good. Then tomorrow morning we'll begin." The following morning, Isabella stands beside Vittorio, facing a veiled body laid on the preparation table. Vittorio pulls back the sheet to reveal the face of a young woman, no more than 25 years old by Isabella's estimation. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Vittorio asks, his voice gentle but firm. Isabella nods solemnly, her resolve clear. "Very well," Vittorio begins. "You need to understand that traditionally, women care for other women in these matters. The clergy trusts me to handle female clients as well, but many families still prefer a woman's touch for their female loved ones. If you're to help, there are rules you must follow." He removes the sheet completely, revealing the woman in full. "First and foremost, we must respect the deceased as though they were still alive. This is essential. Our duties include undressing them, washing them with herbs, performing several necessary cares, and dressing them in the attire their families provide. Today, we'll work on this young woman together. For now, you will only tend to women. Men are off limits." Additionally, I will decide who you can assist with. Victims of violent deaths, for instance, are not suitable for you. They can be unsettling even for seasoned caretakers. Isabella nods again, her expression resolute. Yes, uncle. One more thing, Vittorio continues, his tone shifting slightly. When dealing with the deceased, cleanliness is paramount. This includes being free of any impurity. Isabella tilts her head, unsure of his meaning. Vittorio clarifies delicately, "It is forbidden for a woman to tend to the dead during her monthly cycle. It is a matter of tradition and respect." Isabella's face flushes slightly, her eyes lowering as she nods in shy acknowledgement. Satisfied, Vittorio concludes, "Then let's begin. We'll work together today. A proper preparation can take anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. Lighting a pair of candles, Vittorio says a quiet prayer. This woman, he explains, passed away peacefully in her matrimonial bed. She did not wake up, and the reason remains unknown. Such things often happen to the elderly, but for someone so young, it's a tragedy." The two bow their heads, offering prayers for the departed. By mid-afternoon, Isabella carefully veils the woman's face, signaling the completion of their work. Vittorio observes her with quiet pride. "Well done, niece," he says warmly. "You did an excellent job. You can leave now." The same evening, after washing the dishes and drying her hands on her apron, Isabella announces, "I think I'll call it a night. Good night, uncle." But Vittorio, seated at the table with his ledger open, responds in an unexpected tone, "You're not done yet, Isabella." He gestures toward the open book in front of him. Curious, Isabella steps closer and asks, "What do you mean?" Vittorio gently slides the ledger toward her and explains, "You need to complete the records for the woman you tended to earlier. It's for the church registrar." He points to a blank section on the page. "Here. First name, family name, date of death, cause of death, and any other details you think are worth noting." Isabella takes a seat and picks up the quill, carefully filling out the information. She works with precision, double-checking every entry as the ink dries. Vittorio observes her with quiet satisfaction. When she finishes, he nods approvingly and says, "Almost done." From his pocket, Vittorio produces 3 coins, each a soldi, and sets them on the table. "This is your wage for today's work," he says with a small smile. Isabella's eyes light up as she looks at the coins and then back at her uncle. With a warm smile, she picks them up and says, "Thank you, uncle." "You've earned it," Vittorio replies. "Do you think you'll be ready to do it again?" Isabella straightens, her voice steady with newfound confidence. "Yes, I think I can, as long as the person isn't too heavy." With her small but meaningful bounty in hand, Isabella bids him good night. "Good evening, uncle." "Sleep well," Vittorio replies. Over the next 3 weeks, Isabella earns an impressive 12 soldi from her labor. Though the work lacks excitement, she appreciates its lucrative nature compared to the effort required. Reflecting on her late father's earnings, roughly 10 soldi per week for full-time labor, she feels a quiet pride in her growing financial independence. By now, she is confident in her ability to handle 3 or 4 clients a week without disrupting her household duties. One late afternoon, seated alone in the living room, Isabella pauses while filling out a new entry in the ledger. Her gaze lingers on the nearly completed pages, her eyes drawn to the contrast between her handwriting and Vittorio's. The difference is striking. Her writing flows in softer, more curved lines, exuding a gentleness she finds difficult to put into words. Compelled by curiosity, Isabella hurries to her room and gathers 4 random books from her collection. She flips through their pages, studying the script. The bold, angular strokes of men's handwriting stand in stark contrast to her own. This discovery sparks an idea. Returning to the ledger to finish her task, she leaves it open to dry and collects a scrap of torn paper, her ink and quill. Sitting at her desk, she begins experimenting, attempting to mimic the masculine calligraphy she observed in the books. Engrossed in her practice, Isabella loses track of time. Vittorio's voice breaks her concentration, resonating from the living area. "Is dinner ready?" Startled, she looks over her shoulder and replies, "No, it's not. I'm sorry, Uncle. I'll get to it now." She quickly leaves the room, her desk scattered with ink-stained papers bearing attempts at new writing styles. Later, after finishing her chores, Isabella returns to her desk. She picks up her quill and resumes her experiment, her hand aching from the repetitive motion. Setting the quill down, she rubs her fingers and wrist, the strain palpable. Almost without thinking, she switches the quill to her left hand and begins writing again. The difference is immediate. Her left-handed writing is rough and unrefined, but functional. It's been 4 years since she last wrote with her left hand, yet the motion feels surprisingly natural. If my right hand refuses to adopt a man's calligraphy, perhaps my left hand will, she muses, a smirk lighting up her face as ink smears across the page. For years, her left hand had been idle, cast aside at Vittorio's insistence when she first learned to write. Though messy and imperfect, this marks her first time writing with ink using her left hand. For Isabella, this moment feels like a small, unexpected triumph. For over a week, Isabella has been rigorously practicing her left-handed writing on her wax tablet, refining her strokes and improving her fluency. Confident in her progress, she ventures into the marketplace, spending 3 soldi and 6 denarii on 30 sheets of paper. Through skillful negotiation, and perhaps a hint of her natural charm, she even manages to acquire a modest amount of ink at no additional cost. During her weekly confession, however, the mood shifts. As the session nears its conclusion, Padre Ugolino broaches the subject Isabella dreads most. "Isabella," he begins, his tone carefully measured, "I've heard that you've taken to assisting Vittorio in his duties." Isabella answers cautiously, "Yes, Padre, that is true." The priest nods, his expression unreadable. "It's a noble thing you're doing for your uncle. He's a busy man, and it's commendable that your time is being used for such a greater cause. Moreover," he adds with a slight pause, "it seems your work is becoming known. Word is spreading." Isabella tilts her head slightly, her tone still careful. "I suppose that's a good thing, Padre." "Indeed," he replies. "It will likely bring more opportunities for Vittorio, which is fortunate, but my concern lies with you, my child." Her brow furrows as she asks, "What do you mean, Padre?" Without hesitation, he continues, "Engaging in this kind of work, while virtuous, may have unintended consequences for you. Though no one is speaking ill of you now, it is possible that, in the future, some men may be hesitant to pursue you for marriage because of your occupation. The best prospects might shy away, leaving you with fewer options for a suitable match." Isabella nearly allows a scoff to escape her lips, but quickly composes herself. Adopting a thoughtful tone, she responds, "I hadn't considered that, Padre. You're right. This is something I must reflect on. My uncle does rely on me, and I wouldn't want to neglect my responsibilities. It's quite the dilemma. I promise to give it serious thought." The priest nods approvingly as Isabella crosses herself and leaves the confessional. His gaze lingers on her retreating figure as she exits the church. Once out of sight and far from the priest's watchful eyes, Isabella removes her headscarf and bursts into laughter. Isabella forces herself to rewrite one of her poems using her left hand, a task that proves both challenging and invigorating. The unfamiliar motion demands careful adjustments, including adopting a new grip on the quill to minimize ink smears. Despite her efforts, 2 precious sheets of paper are wasted before she finds her rhythm. By midsummer, her desk tells the story of her perseverance. On the right, A pile of crumpled drafts and torn scraps, remnants of her initial efforts, lie discarded. On the left, a neat stack of finished pages stands, pristine and polished, a testament to her progress. Taking a fresh sheet of paper, Isabella writes in bold, confident letters, Padua's Poetics by Vittorio Ferro. A smirk dances on her lips as she carefully places the title page atop the pristine pile, her sense of accomplishment radiating. The day is warm, and Isabella walks with determination, her steps purposeful as she navigates Padua's bustling streets. Before her stands another bookstore, reputed to be the second best in the city. Gathering her resolve, she closes her eyes, takes a deep breath to steady herself, and enters Signor Librai's shop. The interior is expansive, larger and brighter than the previous store she visited. 5 copyists sit at their desks, engrossed in their meticulous tasks. Shelves brimming with books extend in every direction, their titles covering a broad range of subjects: religion, medicine, astronomy, and even poetry. The potent aroma of parchment and ink fills the air, a heady scent of possibility. Isabella can't help but wonder if this store, like others, has even more treasures hidden in its reserves. The owner, an elderly man of short stature, is attending to 2 customers. Isabella uses the opportunity to peruse the shelves, reading the spines of the volumes. As the previous transaction concludes, the owner approaches her with a genuine smile. "Good morning, young signora. How may I assist you today?" Isabella exaggerates her politeness, her voice composed. "Good morning, signor. I'm here on behalf of my uncle. He wishes to know if it's possible to have these poems published." She extends her documents with an air of practiced poise. Taking the bundle, the man says, "Let's see what we have here." He places the papers on an inclined reading desk and leans close to inspect them, then shifts back, squinting. Isabella's concern grows. "Is something wrong, signor?" she asks hesitantly. Without looking up, he chuckles lightly. "Yes, something is wrong. Getting old is no fun." He pulls out a small, transparent object, breathes on it, wipes it clean, and places it over the document. "Enjoy your eyesight while it's sharp, and don't write in dim light, or you'll end up like me, with a reading stone." Isabella offers a faint smile. "I'll remember that, signor." He reads the opening lines with a dispassionate expression, then nods thoughtfully. "Poetry. I must admit it's not my area of interest, but who am I to judge?" He flips through the pages and asks, "What exactly does your uncle want me to do with these?" In a polite and slightly candid tone, Isabella replies, "My uncle hopes you can make copies and offer them to your customers. He's very proud of them and believes others will enjoy them too." The shopkeeper nods, doing some quick calculations. 15 pages plus a cover, 30 plus 5 soldi per copy, multiplied by 10, since 10 is the minimum order, that comes to 350 soldi. Isabella's eyes widen. 350 soldi? For what? He explains patiently. 2 soldi per page for materials and labor, plus the cost of the cover, and as I mentioned, 10 is the minimum number of copies. Taken aback, Isabella stammers, "That's far more than I mean, it's beyond my uncle's budget." She softens her tone, attempting charm. "Is there any way you might be able to help?" The man sighs, clearly sympathetic. "I'm truly sorry, little one, but there's nothing I can do to lower the cost. You might tell your uncle to consider using street scribes. They're cheaper but attract a less selective clientele. Alternatively, he could copy the text himself to cut costs." He hands the bundle back to her with an apologetic smile. "I wish you luck, signora." With a forced smile, Isabella replies, "Thank you anyway. Have a good day." As she turns to leave, she doesn't notice the shopkeeper's gaze lingering on her, his expression thoughtful. Just as she steps through the door, his voice calls out, "Little signora, come back." Isabella hesitates, then turns and approaches the desk again. The shopkeeper gestures for her to hand over the papers. I might have an idea. Someone I know could potentially be interested in these. I can't guarantee anything, but if you're willing to leave them with me, I can look into it. Isabella's curiosity is piqued. What do you have in mind, Signor? He waves a hand dismissively. I'm not certain yet, but I'll let you know in 2 or 3 weeks if something comes of it. Would that work for you? Nodding, Isabella says, I'll speak with my uncle. In the meantime, please keep them. I'll return in 2 weeks. With a polite farewell, she exits the shop, a glimmer of hope sparking in her heart as she heads home. Filippo pulls the cart into the courtyard, his hooves kicking up small clouds of dust. Vittorio and Donato sit silently on the cart. Isabella, busy watering the garden, barely notices their arrival. Rosso laps water from a small puddle by the well, his fur gleaming in the strong sunlight. The heat presses down heavily, and Isabella's clothes cling to her back, a dark stain of sweat forming as she works. As she hefts a brimming bucket and heads toward the house, the two men begin unloading a coffin from the cart into the workshop. Moments later, while Isabella pours the cool water into a large clay amphora to preserve its temperature, Vittorio strides into the room, setting a heavy book on the table with a thud. Without a word, he picks up a cup and dips it into the remaining water, drinking deeply. Isabella's attention is irresistibly drawn to the book. Her fingers trace the edges of the high-quality cover, the title catching her eye. She gasps softly. "The Iliad," Vittorio announces, breaking the silence, his voice loud and matter-of-fact after quenching his thirst. "I'm told this is the 4th book of 4. Unfortunately, the man who gave it to me only had this one. Alone, it doesn't hold much value. It's in Greek." Isabella opens the book with reverence, carefully turning its fragile pages as though handling a relic. The faded ink and ancient script captivate her. Vittorio leans against the table, continuing his explanation. "The man's wife passed yesterday. His rope business is failing, and he offered me rope as payment for my services. I took 1 coil, just in case, but then I asked if he had a book. He handed me this, saying it was an heirloom of his wife's, though she couldn't read it. Do you think it might interest you?" Before Vittorio can finish his question, Isabella's voice cuts through, swift and resolute. "I'll take it." Vittorio blinks, momentarily startled by her decisiveness. "Very well," he says with a faint chuckle. "I'll let him know the deal is done. Meanwhile," he adds, with a mix of somberness and practicality, "his wife is on the table downstairs." Isabella's grip tightens on the book as she lowers her gaze, nodding silently. Isabella stands quietly, facing the woman beneath the white sheet, the newly acquired book pressed tightly against her chest. With a deep breath, she sets the book down on the table and gently uncovers the woman's face. The features before her belong to someone around 50, serene and composed, as is so often the case in death. Isabella reaches forward, brushing a stray strand of hair away from the woman's face with a tenderness that feels instinctive. "Thank you for the book, Signora," she whispers softly, a small smile gracing her lips. "I wish you could have read it in life." She pulls a stool closer and sits beside the woman, carefully opening the book and flipping through its delicate pages until she finds the one she seeks. With her finger tracing the text, she murmurs, "Book 24, Priam and Achilles." Her voice gains strength as she begins to read, seamlessly translating the ancient Greek into Italian. The room fills with her steady, measured tones as she recounts the poignant tale of King Priam, a father consumed by grief over the loss of his beloved son, Hector. The narrative unfolds, detailing Priam's courage as he risks his life to confront Achilles, begging for Hector's body so he can honor his son in death. Isabella's voice falters slightly as the emotion of the scene resonates with her. She closes the book gently, resting her hand on its cover for a moment of silent reflection. Then, rising from her seat, she devotes herself to preparing the woman for her final rest. Each step is carried out with meticulous care and respect, her movements imbued with reverence. At the end, Isabella selects flowers from her garden, weaving them delicately into the woman's hair and arranging a small bouquet in her resting hands. With a final nod of approval, Isabella steps back, the solemn satisfaction of her work settling over her. "Rest well, Signora," she murmurs, her gaze lingering before she quietly leaves the room. 2 weeks to the day, Isabella steps into Signor Librai's bookstore, her demeanor poised but tinged with anticipation. The elderly owner glances up from his work, his brow furrowing in brief confusion before she reintroduces herself. Recognition lights up his face as he greets her warmly. "I haven't yet seen the person who might be interested in your poems," he says apologetically, "but I promise to pass them along as soon as I do. Come back in 2 weeks and I should have news for you." Isabella nods, masking her mild disappointment with a polite smile. "Thank you, Signor. I'll return then." 2 weeks later, she enters the shop again, this time welcomed with a smile that signals the owner's growing familiarity. "Ah, Signora Isabella," he says, gesturing toward a small pile of papers on his desk. "The poems have reached the man I mentioned. I expect to hear from him shortly." Isabella's spirits lift at his words. "Thank you, Signor Librai," she replies, her tone brimming with gratitude. As she leaves, the thought that someone else might be reading her work at that very moment fills her with quiet joy and hope. Later that day, Isabella carries a bucket of turnip and carrot peels downstairs, intending to feed Filippo. As she steps into the courtyard, she's greeted by an unexpected sight. Vittorio standing beside a horse. The animal is sturdy but slightly smaller than Filippo, its strong frame suggesting a draft horse lineage just like Filippo. Its dark gray coat glistens in the sunlight. "Where did you get it?" Isabella asks, her voice bright with delight. Vittorio pats the horse's neck. "I bought him. It seemed like a good opportunity." Isabella reaches into her bucket and offers the horse a handful of peels. As the animal eagerly chews, she strokes its forehead, marveling at its gentle nature. "He's lovely, but why another horse?" Vittorio looks at her, his expression thoughtful. "Filippo's still a fine horse, but he's not getting any younger. I think it's wise to start training another one now to take on some of the workload. Don't get me wrong. Filippo still has good years ahead of him, but I'd rather plan ahead." He smiles, nodding toward the new addition. His name is Cenere. While Cenere tries to nose his way into the bucket, Isabella laughs softly, continuing to pat his head. "Hello, Cenere," she says warmly. Signor Librai is deeply engrossed in a document, his reading stone pressed to the page, when he senses someone approaching. Looking up, he exclaims warmly, "Good morning, Signora Isabella. It's always a pleasure to see you." "Good morning, Signor Librai," Isabella replies with equal warmth. "How have you been? Do you have any news for me?" "I'm doing well, my dear," he says with a smile. "And yes, I do have news. Good news, in fact. The young man I mentioned to you before has read your uncle's poems." He pauses for effect, clearly expecting a reaction. Isabella tilts her head, confused. "Then what? What's the good news?" she asks, her tone edging toward impatience. "The good news," Librai begins with an air of mystery, "is that he read them." Still perplexed, Isabella presses further. "So, did he like them? Did he comment on them?" Librai shakes his head. No, nothing like that. He simply told me the last time he came in that he read them and would be back later." Lowering his voice, he adds conspiratorially, "Let me tell you something, young signora. When a man of his standing says something like that, it's a good sign." Isabella, now visibly more confused than before, asks bluntly, "Does that mean he's going to purchase them or do something with them?" Libre spreads his hands, looking equally uncertain. I couldn't say. Perhaps he'll read them again, or maybe he'll share them. Poetry isn't really my area of expertise, you know. He shrugs, the faintest hint of a smile on his lips. Isabella's patience begins to fray. Sensing her frustration, Libre softens his tone. Listen, Signora Isabella, not everyone appreciates poetry right away, especially when it's unfamiliar. If your uncle wishes his writing to gain recognition, it will take time. Words must first find their audience, and sometimes opportunities follow in unexpected ways. My advice? Be patient. If something comes of this, it will happen naturally. If not, it wasn't meant to be. He gently taps Isabella's hand where it rests on the table, a reassuring gesture. Don't worry, my dear. Just give it a few months. His kind tone tempers her impatience, though the uncertainty still lingers in her mind as she nods in polite agreement. A pot of stew bubbles vigorously over the fire, steam curling into the air in lazy spirals. Isabella stands over it, her expression tight with frustration as she stirs the contents methodically. The bell chimes the 7th hour, marking the time as late summer's golden light filters through the windows. The sun remains high, but Isabella's mood sinks, less out of worry and more from mounting irritation. Finally, Vittorio's heavy footsteps echo up the stairs, and the door creaks open. Isabella turns to him immediately, her tone sharp. Why are you so late? Vittorio shrugs, his voice half apologetic. I was busy, he mutters, collapsing into the chair by the table. Isabella doesn't let it drop. Using a cloth, she lifts the steaming pot from the fire and sets it firmly on the table. The meat's probably overcooked by now, she remarks, her annoyance evident. Sitting across from him, she presses further. What's been going on lately? You've been coming home late quite frequently. Next time, I won't even start cooking until you're home. And if you complain about being hungry, that'll be your fault, not mine. To an outside observer, this exchange might resemble the quarrel of a married couple rather than an uncle and niece. Yet Vittorio, unbothered by the critique, accepts it in silence, his face unreadable as he begins to serve himself. Isabella stands by the door, lost in reverie as the rain whispers against the earth. The damp air releases a symphony of aromas from the garden, rose, lavender, and the sharp tang of wet stone. Absent-mindedly, she traces the curve of her lips with the tip of her finger, her gaze distant and unfocused. A sudden inspiration takes hold, and she ascends the stairs briskly, her skirt brushing the polished wood. In her bedroom, she retrieves her wax tablet and stylus. She pauses by the window, watching the rain trace delicate rivulets down the glass, each droplet weaving its fleeting path. A smile plays on her lips as she sits and begins to write. Her thoughts turn to a man gazing from afar at a young woman in a garden. She imagines his turmoil, a tempest of longing tempered by the quiet ache of restraint, and seeks to capture the moment in her lines. In her mind's eye, the woman reaches toward a rose, its soft pink petals cascading in delicate perfection, pure, unmarred, and luminous. Her fingers linger, almost reverent, as though reluctant to disturb the bloom's untouched grace. With a gentle pull, she plucks it from its stem, the motion deliberate yet tender. A hidden thorn finds her skin, piercing it with a sharp bite. A bead of crimson wells on her fingertip, the fleeting pain only heightening the sensation of the rose in her grasp. Its velvety softness seems more vivid now, its beauty a triumph made all the more precious by the cost. As Isabella reflects on her works, fragments of memory begin to resurface. Whispers of sensations long since faded, echoes of loves perhaps lost to time. What is real and what is born of her imagination often blur in her mind, until even she can no longer distinguish between the two. Yet, in the quiet of those moments, it hardly seems to matter. The lines she weaves hold truth enough, whether drawn from memory or the depths of her soul.